East Alder Grove looked like it had been sculpted from a Norman Rockwell painting and dipped in vanilla frosting. The streets curled like ribbons through rows of identical beige homes, each with pristine hedges and driveways that glittered under automatic sprinklers. It was a kind of neighborhood where the trash bins were color-coded and the mailboxes stood at uniform angles, where everyone smiled with just enough restraint to imply, "We follow the rules here." I moved in 2 years ago, trading the chaos of downtown engineering life for the supposed peace of suburban order. I wanted quiet, a garden, maybe some time to experiment with renewable tech. What I didn't expect was to end up at war. The war had a name, Karen Trammel. She was the HOA president of East Alder Grove and had held the position for 8 uninterrupted years. Karen was the kind of woman who wore matching pearls and pumps to take out the recycling. She drove a champagne-colored golf cart named Civility, complete with a miniature flag that read Neighborhood Harmony Patrol. To Karen, the HOA wasn't a regulatory body. It was her private fiefdom, and we were all unwitting subjects. My first encounter with her happened during move-in week. I just installed my solar panels, sleek, matte black rectangles that hugged the slope of my roof like a minimalist sculpture. Karen pulled into my driveway, clipboard in hand, smile taut as a bowstring. "Hello, Mr. Shaw. I'm Karen, HOA president. Those panels, were they approved in writing?" "Yes," I replied, producing the signed document. She inspected it like it was counterfeit currency, then nodded, clearly disappointed. "Well, let's keep things in uniformity. Our neighborhood aesthetic is part of our charm." I nodded, biting my tongue. What I didn't tell her, and what I'd only told a handful of people, was that my panels weren't just powering my own house. They were also feeding energy into a decentralized, solar-powered neighborhood security grid. It was a passion project I'd started with my college roommate, Luis, a cybersecurity expert. After a string of burglaries 2 neighborhoods over, we decided to build something low-profile but effective. Hidden cameras, motion sensors, and automatic lighting fed into a secure server housed in my garage. It wasn't official, but it worked. And for a while, life in East Alder Grove was peaceful. The crime rate dropped to 0. Amazon packages stayed on porches. People felt safer, even if they didn't know exactly why. But Karen had an uncanny radar for things she didn't understand. Over the next year, I watched her slowly tighten her grip on the community. She wrote people up for lawn gnomes. Patriotic bunting hung a day past the 4th of July. And once for a child's lemonade stand that she claimed disrupted pedestrian flow. Each infraction came with a cheerful warning, and a fine tucked in an envelope that smelled faintly of potpourri. The residents grumbled but complied. Fear, or perhaps exhaustion, kept them quiet. Karen's reach was subtle but pervasive. No one wanted to make waves. Until she climbed onto my roof with a bucket of paint. It happened while I was at work. My neighbor, Deidre, texted me a blurry photo of Karen on a ladder, flanked by 2 board members. The caption read, "You seen this?" By the time I got home, the damage was done. My solar panels, once sleek and efficient, were now coated in a thick beige enamel. Karen was waiting in my driveway, arms folded like a general after a successful coup. "Your roof didn't match the neighborhood palette," she said breezily. "We corrected it. You'll find a formal notice in your mailbox. You vandalized my property." She blinked innocently. We acted within the boundaries of the HOA's uniform aesthetic provision. Article 7B. The board approved it. I opened my mouth, but she held up a hand. "I understand this may feel sudden, but it's all for the greater good. We must maintain harmony." Then she left, civility humming down the street like a smug little warship. I stood there, staring at my neutered panels, heart pounding with fury. I could already feel the consequences. That night, the outer ring of the security grid flickered. The lights on Elm Street failed to activate. Motion sensors went dark. The network was crumbling. Within 48 hours, the Wendell's house was broken into. No one was hurt, but the patio door had been smashed and their electronics stolen. The security footage? Unavailable. The cameras hadn't had enough power to function. I knew this was only the beginning. The conflict was no longer personal. It had become existential. And Karen, with her pearls and bylaws, Had no idea what she'd just started. I spent that entire night crouched in my garage, rerouting what little solar charge remained through a contingency substation I'd never intended to use this early. The system flickered to life with a gasp of power, barely enough to keep the server running, but not enough for the grid. Elm Street remained dark. The eyes of the neighborhood had been blinded. When I finally collapsed into bed, the adrenaline hadn't worn off. I stared at the ceiling, heart thrumming, mind racing with contingencies. Luis had warned me. Redundancy was everything, but we hadn't anticipated sabotage, especially not from inside the community. By morning, the damage had compounded. The Parkers reported someone had rifled through their unlocked car. Nothing stolen, just chaos. A warning, perhaps? The Garcia sprinkler system shorted when a surge in neighborhood's backup grid triggered a brownout. Systems designed to protect were now falling apart under their own weight. Meanwhile, Karen was on her usual morning patrol, smiling and waving as if she hadn't just lobotomized the neighborhood's last-line defense. I approached her at the cul-de-sac. "We need to talk." She didn't even pause. "Submit a grievance through the proper channels." There are no proper channels when the HOA president defaces private property. She stopped, her smile stiffening. "Mr. Shaw, your attitude is becoming concerning. I suggest you familiarize yourself with Section 3.4 on disruptive behavior. You compromise community security." There was a break-in. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed. "Coincidences happen. Let's not cause panic over unrelated events." Then she turned and drove away, her golf cart emitting a high-pitched trill that sounded suspiciously like smugness. That was her fatal flaw, dismissal. She underestimated how deep I could dig. Over the next week, I turned my home into a war room. I pulled every HOA transcript, every recorded vote, every document with her signature. Most of it was benign, but buried in the minutes of a closed-door board meeting, I found it. An executive decision clause allowing the board to override aesthetic exceptions during emergency revisions to community appearance. It was bogus. I had my approval in writing. Her clause didn't override state law. In fact, according to California Civil Code 714, HOAs couldn't restrict solar energy systems without significant justification. I contacted Luis. "We're going public." But carefully, he hesitated. "You sure you want to poke the queen bee?" "I'm done playing defense." That evening, I met with the Wendells. They were shaken but angry. I explained the grid, why their cameras failed, how the energy loop was severed. I apologized. "You try to help us," Mrs. Wendell said. "Karen didn't. We're with you." One by one, I began reaching out to neighbors. Quietly, discreetly. No calls. No emails. Just porch visits, back fences, whispered plans over barbecue grills. I wasn't looking for outrage. I was building consensus. Turns out, I wasn't the only one with a grudge. The Hendersons had been fined for repainting their front door navy blue. The Yims were forced to cut down a tree Karen claimed blocked symmetry. The Patel kids weren't allowed to play basketball in their own driveway. Her reign was fraying at the edges, and no one had dared say it aloud. Until now. We started calling ourselves the Block. It wasn't a rebellion. Not yet, but it was resistance. Every movement needs a spark. Ours came in the form of a flyer Karen posted on every mailbox. It read, "Effective immediately. Unauthorized modifications to homes, including security equipment, are subject to HOA fines and removal at owner's expense. For your safety, compliance is non-negotiable." It was a final insult, and for once it was too much. I stood before 20 neighbors in my garage, schematics spread across a whiteboard. This is how we take our neighborhood back. Not with torches, not with lawsuits, with proof, with process, with precision. That night, Luis helped me reroute what was left of the system. We activated 3 hidden cameras, still operational on backup battery. They pointed in one direction, Karen's house. I didn't need to catch her doing anything criminal. I just needed the truth, and I had a feeling she couldn't help herself. The block was ready. Luis once told me the most dangerous kind of surveillance isn't what you install, it's what you provoke. The 3 cameras perched discreetly in neighboring flower beds and birdhouses streamed footage directly into my basement hub. I watched the screen like a man studying weather patterns before a storm. For 3 days, Karen's behavior was meticulously mundane. Daily patrols, passive-aggressive notes tucked under doormats, impromptu HOA meetings on her porch. But then on a Thursday evening just past 10, she made her mistake. She emerged from her back patio, wearing gardening gloves and a visor, a flashlight clenched between her teeth. She wasn't gardening. Camera 2 caught it all. Karen walking across her lawn to the Henderson property line with a roll of caution tape. She strung it across their perfectly legal new deck, like it was a crime scene. Then she sprayed something, orange paint, onto their siding. A single word, violation. Luis froze the footage. That's not overreach. That's criminal mischief. It was time to move. We created an anonymous Dropbox folder, sharing it only with block members. Footage, documents, HOA violations, all time-stamped, all cataloged. The next day, the block began distributing QR-coded flyers to every doorstep. No headlines, no accusations, just a phrase, see what you're not supposed to see. By the weekend, half the neighborhood had watched Karen's midnight escapade. Sunday's emergency board meeting was a volcano waiting to blow. Karen tried to carry on as usual, sipping iced tea under her striped awning. But the looks she received weren't admiring. They were calculating. I watched from the sidewalk, arms crossed, as Deidre stepped forward. "Care to explain this?" she asked, holding up her phone. Karen's eyes narrowed. She didn't even look. Doctored footage, digital tricks. You can't believe everything you see online. The crowd murmured. So was the Henderson's deck a threat to national security? Mr. Patel called out. Karen lost her smile. "This meeting is over," she snapped. "As acting president, You're not acting anything anymore," I said, stepping forward. I held up a printout of the state statute and my original solar approval. According to Civil Code 714, your actions are not only illegitimate, they're illegal. Your authority was based on forged interpretation of HOA powers. Luis, standing beside me, handed Deidre a thumb drive. The footage, the documents, all of it's backed up and going to County HOA Oversight Board unless Karen steps down. Tonight, Karen looked around. No allies stepped forward. Even her favorite lapdog, board member Cynthia, averted her gaze. Karen's lip trembled. Her voice broke. "You're ruining everything. This neighborhood used to be perfect. It still can be," I said, "but not under tyranny." There was no vote that night. There didn't need to be. Karen got into civility and drove away in silence. But the story wasn't over, because the cameras were still rolling.